If you're driving through Texas right now, especially if you're anywhere near Route 287, pull over. I need you to listen to this. Check your clock. What time is it? If it's between 2 and 4 a.m. and you're on that stretch between Wichita Falls and Amarillo, turn around. I don't care where you're going or how important it is. Turn around. Drop a comment below. Have you ever driven Route 287 at night? Did you notice anything off? Maybe your GPS glitched. Maybe you saw cars that looked too old, too perfect. Maybe you're one of the lucky ones who drove through when it was normal. Or maybe you're one of the 17 people who messaged me saying they lost 3 hours on that road and can't remember why. My name is Trooper Marcus Webb, Texas Department of Public Safety, badge hash 4782. Retired. Forcibly retired, if we're being honest, after I filed a report about what happens on Route 287 between mile markers 147 and 157. That 10-mile stretch of highway that between 2 and 4 a.m. becomes something else entirely. The state says I suffered a psychological break, says the stress of the job finally got to me. But I know what I saw, I know what I experienced, and I have the proof. Dashcam footage they claim doesn't exist, radio recordings they say were corrupted, and 3 missing persons who were found 20 years after they disappeared. Without aging a single day, this is the real story, not the official report. This is what actually happens on the highway that Texas doesn't want you to know about. I'd been a Texas state trooper for 23 years when everything went to hell on March 15, 2021. 23 years of pulling over drunk drivers, investigating accidents, helping stranded motorists in the middle of nowhere. I knew every mile of Route 287 like the back of my hand. Every speed trap, every dangerous curve, every spot where deer like to cross. That highway was my office, my second home. That night started like any other. I was working the night shift out of the Wichita Falls district office, patrolling the section of 287 that runs northwest toward Amarillo. It's a lonely stretch of road, 200 miles of nothing but ranch land, oil pumps, and the occasional small town that's more memory than reality. The kind of place where you can drive for an hour without seeing another car, where the radio stations fade to static, and where the stars are so bright they make you feel like you're floating in space. I'd just passed mile marker 145, running radar near an overpass where speeders like to open up, when I got a call from dispatch. Unit 23, this is dispatch, we've got a welfare check request. Go ahead, dispatch, I responded, already slowing down to find a place to turn around. Motorist reported a vehicle stopped on the shoulder near mile marker 152. Hazards on, driver's door open, no one around. Caller said the car looked like it had been there a while. Mile marker 152. Right in the middle of what locals called the dead zone, a 10-mile stretch where cell phones didn't work. Radio signals got weird, and even satellite GPS would sometimes show you as being miles from where you actually were. The truckers avoided it at night when they could, said it gave them the creeps. I'd always written it off as superstition. Unit 23 responding, ETA 5 minutes. The clock on my dashboard read 1:58 a.m. when I started heading north. By the time I reached mile marker 150, it had clicked over to 2 a.m., and that's when things started getting strange. The first thing I noticed was my radio. The usual static and chatter from other units faded out, replaced by something else. Music. Old music, like from the 1960s, crackling through the speakers like it was coming from an AM station far away. But there were no AM stations that broadcast out here, especially not at this hour. President Johnson announced today that additional troops would be deployed to Vietnam. A news broadcaster's voice cut through the music before dissolving back to static. I reached for my radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 23. Are you picking up any interference on this channel?" No response. Just that old music, getting clearer now. The Ronettes singing "Be My Baby." The sound quality was terrible, tinny and distant, but unmistakable. The temperature gauge in my cruiser started acting up, showing the outside temperature dropping from 72 degrees to 45, then shooting up to 90, before settling on a reading that just said error. My GPS screen flickered, the map disappearing and reappearing, showing my location jumping between the current date and October 15th, 1967. I should have turned around right then. Every instinct I had was screaming at me that something was wrong. But there was a vehicle ahead, possibly someone in trouble, and after 2 decades as a cop, the instinct to help overrode everything else. I saw the car at mile marker 152, exactly where the caller had described. But as I got closer, my headlights illuminated something that made my blood run cold. It wasn't a modern vehicle. It was a 1967 Plymouth Fury, cherry red with white wall tires looking like it had just rolled off the assembly line. The kind of car you'd see at classic car shows, meticulously restored. Except this one had current Texas plates. I ran the plates before getting out, but my computer system was glitching, showing no results, then showing the car was registered to someone named James Morrison in 1967, then showing it didn't exist at all. Standard procedure said to call for backup in unusual situations. But my radio was now playing nothing but that old music, and my cell phone showed no signal. I was alone out here. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out of the cruiser. The moment my feet hit the pavement, the world felt different. The air was thicker, heavier, and there was a smell like ozone before a thunderstorm, even though the sky was clear. The stars above looked wrong somehow, brighter maybe, or in slightly different positions. I'm not an astronomer, but I'd spent enough nights looking up at that Texas sky to know when something was off. "Texas State Trooper!" I called out, approaching the Plymouth. "Anyone here need assistance?" No response. The car's engine was off, but when I put my hand on the hood, it was warm. The keys were in the ignition, the driver's door hanging open just like the caller had described. But the interior was what really got me. The car wasn't just restored to look like 1967, everything in it was from 1967. A newspaper on the passenger seat dated October 15th, 1967. A pack of cigarettes that hadn't been manufactured in 50 years. A receipt from a gas station showing gas at 33 cents a gallon. I leaned in to get a better look at the newspaper, and that's when I heard it. Another engine approaching from the south. I straightened up, expecting to see another motorist or maybe backup that dispatch had sent without being able to tell me. But what came into view wasn't any modern vehicle. It was a 1959 Cadillac Eldorado, massive and gleaming, moving at exactly 55 miles per hour. As it passed, I saw the driver clearly in my flashlight beam. He was wearing a fedora and a suit that looked straight out of a period movie. But it was his face that made me freeze. It was completely expressionless, eyes fixed straight ahead, hands at perfect 10 and 2 on the wheel. He didn't react to my presence, didn't even seem to see me or my cruiser with its lights flashing. And then another car passed. A 1963 Chevrolet Impala. Then a 1971 Ford Mustang. Then more. All pristine. All driven by people in period-appropriate clothing. All moving at exactly 55 miles per hour. All with drivers who stared straight ahead with those blank expressions. I ran back to my cruiser and grabbed my dash cam, making sure it was recording. The timestamp showed 2:15 a.m., March 15th, 2021. But the parade of vintage vehicles continued. Each one perfect, each one impossible. That's when I noticed the mile markers were changing. The marker that had read 152 now showed 78. The highway itself looked different. Narrower, the asphalt darker and less worn. The modern reflective lane markers were gone, replaced by simple white paint. Even my cruiser looked different in the reflection from the Plymouth's chrome bumper. Older, boxier, like the patrol cars from decades ago. I tried to get back in my cruiser, but the door wouldn't open. My key fob didn't work, and when I looked closer, there was no key fob receiver, just an old-style keyhole. My modern Crown Victoria had transformed into what looked like a 1967 Plymouth patrol car, complete with a different badge number on the side. The rational part of my brain was screaming that this was impossible, that I was having some kind of breakdown or hallucination. But everything felt real. The cold metal of the car door, the smell of leaded gasoline from the passing vehicles, the sound of older engines without modern emission controls. I looked at my uniform and nearly collapsed. It had changed too. My modern polyester uniform was now wool, heavier and cut differently. My badge was different. Still Texas State Trooper, but an older design. My service weapon was no longer a Glock, but a Smith & Wesson Model 19 revolver. And then I heard the radio in my transformed cruiser crackle to life. Not my modern digital radio, but an old analog system. Unit 14, this is dispatch. What's your 20? Unit 14. That had been my badge number when I first joined the force in 1998. But the voice coming through the radio wasn't any dispatcher I knew. It sounded older, more formal, with a slight accent that you didn't hear much anymore. Unit 14, please respond. We have a report of an abandoned vehicle near mile marker 78. Mile marker 78. The same number the sign now showed, even though I knew I was at marker 152. Or had been, or would be. Time seemed to have become negotiable. I reached for the radio handset, my hand shaking. Dispatch, this is Unit. I paused. Was I Unit 23 or Unit 14? Was it 2021 or 1967? Was I Marcus Webb, 23-year veteran, or was I someone else entirely? Before I could decide how to respond, headlights appeared in the distance. But these were different from the vintage cars that had been passing. These were modern, bright LED headlights. As the vehicle got closer, I could see it was a current model Texas State Trooper vehicle. It pulled up behind the Plymouth, and outstepped a trooper I didn't recognize. Young, maybe mid-20s, with a confused look on his face. "Sir?" he called out, his hand resting on his service weapon. "Sir, are you all right? Why are you dressed like that?" I looked down at myself, then at him. To him, I must have looked like someone in a costume, standing next to vintage cars on a modern highway. But when I looked around, I saw both realities simultaneously. The modern highway with its smooth asphalt and LED streetlights, and the older road with its narrow lanes and wooden telephone poles. Both existing in the same space, separated by what? Time? Dimension? Something else? "What's the date?" I asked him. He looked at me strangely. "It's March 15th, 2021. Sir, are you feeling all right? Do you need medical assistance?" March 15th, 2021. The same date I'd started my shift. But when I looked at my watch, which had transformed from digital to analog, it showed October 15th, 1967. "Listen to me very carefully," I said to the young trooper. "What time is it?" "It's 2:47 a.m., sir. You need to leave. Now. Get back in your car and drive away from here as fast as you can. Don't stop until you're past mile marker 160. "Sir, I can't just leave." "What's your name, trooper?" "Davidson. Jake Davidson." "Davidson, I'm Trooper Marcus Webb. Badge 4782. Look me up when you get back to the station. You'll find I'm a 23-year veteran, and then you'll wonder how I'm standing here looking like I'm from 1967. Get out of here now, before it's too late." He hesitated, but something in my voice must have convinced him. He backed toward his cruiser, keeping his eyes on me like I might be dangerous. As he opened his door, I saw his expression change. He was looking past me, at the road, and his face went pale. "What the hell?" he whispered. I turned to look. The parade of vintage cars had returned, but now they were mixed with modern vehicles. A 2020 Tesla drove past, followed by a 1955 Chevrolet Bel Air, followed by something I didn't recognize. A car that looked impossibly sleek and advanced, like something from a science fiction movie. All moving at exactly 55 miles per hour. All with drivers staring straight ahead. "Go!" I shouted at Davidson. He didn't need to be told twice. He jumped in his cruiser and peeled out, speeding north away from whatever this was. I watched his taillights disappear, hoping he'd make it past mile marker 160 before... Before what? Before he got trapped like I was? Because I was trapped. When I tried to walk back to my cruiser, whichever version of it was real, my legs felt like they were moving through molasses. The air itself seemed to resist me. And worse, I could feel myself changing, becoming less solid, less fixed in any one timeline. The young trooper's taillights disappeared into the distance, and I was alone again. Alone with the impossible parade of vehicles from every era. Alone with a highway that couldn't decide what decade it existed in. Alone with the growing realization that I might never leave this 10-mile stretch of road. I tried to use logic. Tried to approach this like any other investigation. First, establish the facts. I pulled out my notebook, which had somehow remained modern despite my uniform changing, and started writing down everything I observed. 2:52 a.m., or was it 1967? The vehicles passing by followed a pattern. They appeared in chronological order. 1950s, 60s, 70s, up through modern day, then vehicles I didn't recognize that must have been from the future. Then back to the 1950s. The complete cycle took exactly 17 minutes. 3 a.m. The transformation wasn't just affecting vehicles. I watched a ranch fence along the highway morph from weathered wood to fresh painted white to chain link to something that looked like pure energy, then back to wood. The landscape itself was cycling through time. 3:07 a.m. I discovered I could partially control which timeline I was in by concentrating. If I focused hard on 2021, my uniform would flicker back to modern polyester. My cruiser would sometimes appear as a Crown Vic again. But it took enormous effort, and the moment my concentration slipped, I'd snap back to 1967. That's when I heard the voice. "You're fighting it too hard, trooper." I spun around, hand going to my weapon, whichever version I currently had. A man stood by the abandoned Plymouth, but he wasn't quite solid. He flickered between appearances, sometimes wearing a 1960s business suit, sometimes modern casual clothes, sometimes something that looked like it was from decades in the future. "Who are you?" I demanded. "James Morrison. That's my Plymouth. Well, was my Plymouth. Is my Plymouth? Time gets confusing here." He smiled sadly. "I've been trying to leave since October 15th, 1967. My blood went cold. That's 54 years. Is it? Feels like yesterday. Feels like forever. Both? Neither." He walked toward me, his form solidifying slightly. In this moment, he looked about 40, wearing a suit from the late 60s. "You're new, still fighting it. That's good. Means you might still have a chance." "A chance to what?" "To leave. But you have to understand what this place is first." He gestured to the highway stretching in both directions. This isn't just a road, it's a scar. A place where something went wrong with time itself. That's impossible. James laughed, but there was no humor in it. Officer, you're standing on a highway that exists in all time simultaneously, talking to a man who's been missing for 5 decades, and your own uniform can't decide what era it belongs to. Maybe it's time to expand your definition of possible. He had a point. I put away my weapon, realizing how useless it would be against whatever was happening here. What caused this? I asked. October 15th, 1967. There was an accident. A big one. Military convoy carrying something classified, probably from that base up near Amarillo. Pantex, where they work on the nuclear weapons. Truck jackknifed right at mile marker 152. Whatever they were carrying, it didn't explode. It did something worse. It broke time. And you saw this? I was driving home from a business trip. Saw the whole thing. The truck split open and this light came out. Not regular light. Light that moved wrong, bent wrong. It washed over this whole stretch of highway and suddenly everything was happening at once. Past, present, future, all existing simultaneously. But the highway is still here. People drive on it every day. During the day, yes. And most nights, too. But between 2 and 4 a.m., when the barrier between times is thinnest, this section reverts to its true state, unstuck, unfixed, a temporal anomaly that the government would rather pretend doesn't exist. The government knows. James laughed again. Of course they know. Why do you think there's never any construction here? No improvements, no maintenance between markers 147 and 157. They've tried to fix it, tried to contain it. Nothing works. So they just manage it, keep it quiet, discredit anyone who talks about it. I thought about Trooper Davidson, who'd seen me and fled. Would anyone believe him? Would they believe me? You said I still have a chance to leave. How? The same way you got in. The boundaries, mile markers 147 and 157, they're like airlocks. During the transition times, 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., they're permeable. You can pass through them if you're quick, if you don't get distracted, if you don't let the highway claim you. But you've been here for decades. His face fell. I waited too long. Got fascinated by it all. Started exploring, trying to understand. Met others who were trapped. People from the 1950s, the 1970s, the 1990s. Even met some people from the future, though they're harder to understand. By the time I tried to leave, I'd been here too long. The highway had claimed me. I exist here now, in all times and no time. Others? How many others? 17 permanent residents last I counted, though permanent is relative when time doesn't work right. Some fade in and out, some only exist on certain loops. There's Betty Chen from 1952, still looking for her husband who was driving the car ahead of her when she got trapped. Tom Washington from 1984, a trucker who jackknifed trying to avoid something that hadn't happened yet. Sarah Kalinsky from 2003, a college kid who was texting and driving when she entered the anomaly. She's stuck in a loop, always reaching for a phone that exists in a different timeline. And they're all still here? Still alive? Alive? Dead? Neither, both. Time doesn't mean what you think it means here. You age and don't age. You exist in multiple states. Young, old, not born yet, long dead, all simultaneously. I felt nauseous. The thought of being trapped here, experiencing all times at once, never able to leave. How do I get out? I asked urgently. What do I need to do? First, check your watch. Your real watch, not the one that changes. I looked at my wrist. My digital watch flickered between showing 3:24 a.m. March 15th, 2021, and an analog showing times from dozens of different dates. Focus on your real time, James instructed. Hold on to it. That's your anchor. Then drive. Don't walk, drive straight toward mile marker 157. Don't stop. Don't look at the other cars. Don't listen to the radio. Don't help anyone who seems to need help. Just drive. What about you? Can't you come with me? He shook his head, his form starting to flicker more rapidly. I told you, I'm part of this place now. But you're not yet. You have maybe 30 minutes before the highway starts to claim you. After that, I become like you. If you're lucky. Some people fragment completely, existing as echoes across multiple timelines. Others get stuck in loops, reliving the same moment forever. Trust me, becoming a permanent resident is actually one of the better outcomes. I ran back to my cruiser, whichever version of it was most real. The door handle felt solid under my hand, a good sign. The engine started on the first try, better. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw 3 different versions of myself looking back. The 2021 me, tired and terrified. A younger me from 1998, fresh-faced and confident. And an older me, grizzled and wearing a uniform I didn't recognize, from sometime in the future. Don't look, I told myself, focusing on the road ahead. I put the car in drive and started north toward the mile marker 157. The speedometer read 55 miles per hour, but it felt like I wasn't moving at all. The scenery outside rippled and shifted, showing me the same stretch of road in dozens of different time periods. I passed a covered wagon train from the 1800s. I passed hover vehicles from some unimaginable future. I passed myself, in my own cruiser, going the opposite direction, trapped in some other loop. The radio crackled to life, cycling through stations and eras. President Kennedy announced today, the first Mars colony established. Republic of Texas Rangers report Comanche raids. Temporal anomaly detected on Route 287. That last one caught my attention. It sounded modern, clinical. All units be advised, do not approach the affected area between 0200 and 0400 hours. Repeat, Highway 287 between mile markers 147 and 157 is experiencing a Class 4 temporal event. Do not approach. Class 4 temporal event. So they did know. They had classifications for this. Mile marker 153 passed by my window, but it showed 3 different numbers simultaneously. 79, 153, and 241. Past, present, future. I pressed harder on the accelerator, but the speedometer stayed locked at 55. That's when I saw her. A woman standing in the middle of the road, waving frantically. She wore a 1950s dress, but her face was young, terrified. Betty Chen, I realized. Still looking for her husband after 70 years. Please, she called out, her voice carrying impossibly well through my closed windows. Please help me. I can't find Harold. He was just ahead of me. James had warned me, don't stop. Don't help anyone. But every instinct I had as a cop, as a human being, screamed at me to help her. I gripped the steering wheel tighter and drove straight at her. She vanished just before impact, reappearing in my rearview mirror, still waving, still calling for help, still trapped in 1952 while existing in 2021. Mile marker 154. The car's engine started to stutter. The dashboard lights flickered between digital displays and analog gauges. My uniform began shifting more rapidly, and I could feel myself starting to fragment. Part of me was Marcus Webb, 2021 state trooper. Part of me was a Texas Ranger from 1876. Part of me was something else. Someone else. from a time that hadn't happened yet. Hold on, I told myself, or myselves. Just 3 more miles. But 3 miles on a road where distance is as negotiable as time might as well be 3,000, or 3 inches, or both. Mile marker 155. The parade of vehicles was getting denser. Cars from every era, all moving at exactly 55 miles per hour, filled every lane, even lanes that didn't exist in my timeline. I had to weave between them, sometimes passing through them like they were ghosts, sometimes having to swerve to avoid collisions that would happen in different decades. That's when I saw it. My own death. It was a twisted pile of metal that used to be a Crown Victoria, wrapped around a concrete barrier that wouldn't be built until 2025. Inside, I could see myself, older, grayer, very clearly dead. But also, simultaneously, I saw myself climbing out of the wreck, confused, looking around at a highway that existed in too many times at once. "That's your future if you stay," James Morrison's voice came through my radio. "Or your past, or your present. It's already happened, is happening, will happen, unless you leave now." Mile marker 156. 1 more mile. But I could feel the highway pulling at me, trying to keep me. My hands started to phase through the steering wheel. The engine coughed, died, started again, running on fuels from different decades. Leaded gas, unleaded, something that smelled like ozone and hadn't been invented yet. I saw them then. All 17 permanent residents standing along both sides of the road like an honor guard. Or a farewell committee. Or a welcoming party. James Morrison was there, flickering between his various selves. Betty Chen, eternally searching. Tom Washington, his semi-truck existing in multiple states of jackknife disaster. Sarah Kolinsky, forever reaching for her phone, trapped in 2003. And others I didn't know yet. Would never know. Would always have known. They were all watching me, waiting to see if I'd make it out or join them. Mile marker 156.5. The engine died completely. The car started to coast, slowing despite my desperate attempts to restart it. 55 miles per hour, 50, 45, 40. "No, no, no," I shouted, turning the key frantically. 35 miles per hour, 30. I could see mile marker 157 ahead, maybe a quarter mile away. But at this rate, I'd stop before I reached it. And if I stopped, if I got out to walk, 25 miles per hour. The other trapped souls began walking alongside my coasting cruiser, keeping pace easily. "Join us," they said in unison, their voices spanning decades. It's not so bad, once you accept it. 20 miles per hour. That's when I heard it. A siren, modern, real, getting closer. In my mirrors, I saw Trooper Davidson's cruiser, racing up behind me with lights and sirens blazing. He was coming back. The kid was coming back for me. His cruiser slammed into mine from behind, a perfect pit maneuver that sent me spinning but also gave me momentum. My car lurched forward, speedometer jumping back to 30, then 35, as I spun toward mile marker 157. The world exploded into chaos. All timelines converged at once. I was spinning through the Civil War, through the space age, through prehistory when this was all empty prairie, through futures where the highway was a maglev track, where it was underwater, where it was gone entirely. And then, suddenly, silence. I was sitting in my modern Crown Victoria, engine running smoothly at mile marker 158. The clock read 4:01 a.m., March 15th, 2021. My uniform was polyester. My badge was modern. My dash cam was recording normal highway. Behind me, I could see Davidson's cruiser pulling up, the young trooper getting out and running toward me. "Sir, sir, are you okay?" I looked back at the stretch of highway behind us. It looked normal, completely, utterly normal. Just asphalt and painted lines and the occasional reflector gleaming in our headlights. "Did you see them?" I asked. "The other cars? The people?" Davidson's face was pale. "I saw something. When I came back for you, the highway was full of cars that shouldn't exist. And you were in all of them, driving different vehicles from different times, all at once. You came back for me. You told me to look you up. I did. Dispatch confirmed you were a 23-year veteran, but they also said you'd called in sick tonight, that you weren't on duty. So who was the Marcus Webb I met on that highway?" I didn't have an answer for him. I looked at my dashcam display. It showed 2 hours of footage from tonight. I knew what I'd find when I reviewed it. Evidence of the impossible, proof that Route 287 between mile markers 147 and 157 was something more than just a highway. "We need to report this," Davidson said. "No," I said firmly. "We don't." "But sir, they already know Davidson. They've always known. And if we report it, really report it, with all the details, best case, we're suspended for psychological evaluation. Worst case." I thought about the 17 souls trapped on that 10-mile stretch. How many of them had been cops, government employees, people who'd tried to report what they'd seen. Worst case, we end up back there permanently, I finished. Davidson was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "So, what do we do?" "We file a routine report. Investigated an abandoned vehicle. No driver located. Vehicle towed. End of story." "And the dashcam footage?" I reached over and ejected the memory card from my dashcam. Such a small thing to hold 2 hours of impossible events. Gets lost. Corrupted. Unusable. "Sir, that's survival, Davidson. That highway, it's not done with us. I can feel it. Once you've been there, really been there, it keeps calling you back. We're going to have to be careful. Never patrol that stretch between 2 and 4 a.m. Never stop between markers 147 and 157 no matter what we see. Never talk about it except to each other." He nodded again, understanding the weight of what we were agreeing to. "What about the others?" he asked. "The 17 people trapped there?" I thought about James Morrison, about Betty Chen, about all of them existing in their temporal prison. They're beyond our help. They're part of the highway now, as much as the asphalt and the mile markers. All we can do is make sure we don't join them. The next 3 weeks were hell. Not because of what happened on the highway. That was over, at least for the moment. The hell was trying to live with the knowledge of what existed out there while pretending everything was normal. I went back to my regular shifts, wrote my regular tickets, responded to regular calls. But nothing felt regular anymore. Every time I drove past mile marker 147, even in broad daylight, I could feel it pulling at me. The highway wanted me back. And worse, part of me wanted to go back. Davidson was struggling too. He'd started requesting day shifts only, making excuses about family obligations. But I knew the truth. He was having the dreams, the same ones I was having. Dreams where we were driving that stretch at 2 a.m., windows down, radio playing music from every decade at once. Dreams where we belonged there, had always belonged there, would always belong there. It was April 2nd when everything changed again. I was at home, supposedly off duty, when my personal phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer. Trooper Webb? The voice was female, professional, with that particular tone that screamed federal government. "Who is this?" "Agent Diana Mitchell, Department of Temporal Investigations." I almost laughed. "Department of what now?" "I think you heard me correctly, Trooper. We need to talk about your March 15th encounter on Route 287. My blood went cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Trooper Webb, we have your dashcam footage. We have Trooper Davidson's testimony. We have satellite imagery showing temporal distortions between mile markers 147 and 157. We know exactly what you experienced. What I'm offering you is a chance to understand it. And if I refuse, then you'll probably end up back there within 6 months. The pull gets stronger, Trooper. They always go back, unless they understand what they're dealing with." 3 hours later, I was sitting in a conference room at a federal building in Fort Worth that supposedly housed regional EPA offices. Agent Mitchell sat across from me, mid-40s, sharp eyes, the kind of person who'd seen too much and had learned to compartmentalize it all. She slid a tablet across the table. On it was video footage, my dashcam footage, but enhanced, clarified. I could see the vintage cars clearly, could see the timeline shifts, could even see the multiple versions of myself in the mirrors. "How?" I asked. "The camera recorded everything, even the things that shouldn't exist. We have software that can extract and analyze temporal anomalies. Your footage is actually some of the clearest we've ever recovered from Highway 287. So you do know about it. We've known since 1967, the night it happened." She pulled up another file. October 15th, 1967. A convoy from Pantex was transporting something we called a temporal resonance device. Experimental technology, based on some Nazi research we'd acquired after World War II. It was supposed to be a weapon, something that could age enemy equipment to uselessness or restore our own damaged vehicles to pristine condition. Time manipulation. Localized temporal adjustment, technically. But yes, the convoy was hit by a drunk driver at mile marker 152. The containment unit cracked. The device activated, and instead of a localized effect, it created what we call a temporal fracture zone. A 10-mile stretch of highway that exists in quantum superposition, experiencing all possible timelines simultaneously. "And you just left it there?" Mitchell's expression hardened. "We've tried everything, removing the road, building a bypass, even attempting to detonate the zone out of existence. Nothing works. The fracture repairs itself, rebuilds the highway exactly as it was. It's become a fixed point in space-time. All we can do is manage it." Manage it how? By monitoring who goes through during the active hours, by discrediting those who talk publicly, by recruiting those who've experienced it and survived. She leaned forward. "People like you, Trooper Webb. You want me to work for you? I want you to help us understand something. You see, most people who encounter the TFZ either get trapped immediately or flee and never return. But you did something different. You interacted with the permanent residents. You spoke with James Morrison." I stiffened. "You know about Morrison?" "We've been tracking him since 1967. He's become something of a temporal anchor for that zone. His presence stabilizes it somewhat, keeps it from expanding. But recently, he's been more active. Talking to travelers, trying to warn them, we think he's planning something." "Planning what?" Mitchell pulled up another file. This one showed a graph with dates and times, patterns I didn't understand. "Every 54 years, the fracture zone experiences what we call a resonance event. The barriers between timelines become completely permeable. For one night, the zone expands beyond its usual boundaries. The last one was October 15th, 1967, the night it was created. The next one is October 15th, 2021. I did the math. That's 6 months from now. 6 months and 13 days to be precise. And based on our calculations, this resonance event will be different, stronger. The zone could expand to cover the entire highway, maybe further. Unless what? Unless we can convince the permanent residents to help us contain it. And the only person James Morrison has spoken to in 20 years is you. I sat back, processing all of this. A government department that dealt with temporal anomalies. A highway that existed in all times at once. And somehow I was now part of it all. What exactly are you asking me to do? Go back, tonight. Talk to Morrison. Find out what he knows about the resonance event. Convince him to help us. You're insane. I barely got out last time. You'll have support this time. She gestured to the door, and 2 other agents entered. They looked normal enough, but there was something off about them, something I couldn't quite place. Agents Chen and Harrison. Mitchell introduced them. They're specialists in temporal navigation. They've both been through the zone multiple times. Chen, no relation to Betty Chen from 1952, I hoped, nodded at me. The trick is not fighting it, he said. His voice had an odd quality, like it was coming from multiple distances at once. Except that you exist in multiple timelines, but choose which one to act in. Easy for you to say. Harrison laughed, and I realized what was off about them. They flickered, just slightly, like James Morrison had. They had spent so much time in temporal anomalies that they weren't entirely fixed in one timeline anymore. It gets easier, Harrison said, or harder, depending on your perspective. And when you are, Mitchell stood up. The choice is yours, Trooper Webb. Help us, and we can teach you to manage the pull, to resist the zone's call. Refuse, and, well, statistics say you'll be back there within 6 months anyway. Permanently. I thought about the dreams, about the constant pull I felt toward that stretch of highway. I thought about Davidson, young and scared, counting on me to know what to do. I thought about the 17 souls trapped there, and the possibility of that expanding to cover hundreds of miles of highway. When do we leave? I asked. Midnight, Mitchell said. We'll enter the zone at exactly 2 a.m. The hours until midnight passed too quickly. I called Davidson, told him I was handling something, that he should stay away from 287 tonight, no matter what. He understood without me having to explain. The kid was smart. At 11:45 p.m., I met Mitchell and her team at a staging area just outside Wichita Falls. They had 3 vehicles, modern SUVs with government plates, but I could see modifications, extra equipment that looked both cutting-edge and impossibly ancient. Temporal stabilizers, Chen explained, noticing my stare. They help us maintain coherence in the zone. Won't stop the timeline shifts, but they'll keep us from fragmenting completely. Comforting. We drove toward mile marker 147, and with each mile I felt the pull getting stronger. The clock on the dashboard read 1:57 a.m. when we reached the boundary. Remember, Mitchell said over the radio, we're looking for Morrison. He usually manifests near the original accident site at marker 152. We make contact, deliver the message, and get out. No deviations. 2 a.m. exactly. We crossed mile marker 147, and reality immediately began to fracture. But this time was different. The SUV's stabilizers created bubbles of relatively normal space-time around us. I could still see the timeline shifts outside the windows, the parade of vehicles from every era, the landscape morphing between decades. But inside the vehicle, we remained mostly stable. Contact, Harrison reported. Multiple permanent residents detected. Morrison is there. Marker 152, east side of the highway. Through the windshield, I could see him. James Morrison stood beside his eternal Plymouth, but he wasn't alone. All 17 permanent residents were there, arranged in a circle. and in the center was something I hadn't seen before. A sphere of pure distortion, about the size of a basketball, hovering 3 feet off the ground. It hurt to look at directly. "What is that?" I asked. "The core," Mitchell breathed. "The original temporal resonance device. They found it." We stopped 20 feet from the circle. The moment we stepped out of the vehicles, I felt the full force of the temporal zone hit me. Without the stabilizer's protection, I started to fragment immediately. I was 25 and 47 and 68 all at once. "Morrison!" I called out, fighting to maintain coherence. "James Morrison! It's Marcus Webb!" He turned to look at me, and his expression was sad but determined. "Trooper Webb, I wondered if you'd come back, though I knew you would. You already have, Will. Are." He gestured to the sphere. "Do you know what this is? The device that caused all this. The device that revealed what was always true." Morrison corrected. "Time isn't linear, Trooper. It never was. We just pretended it was because it was easier. This device doesn't break time. It shows time as it really is, all moments existing simultaneously." "The government wants to contain it," I said. "There's going to be a resonance event, October 15th. They're afraid it will spread." Morrison laughed, and the other residents laughed with him, their voices spanning centuries. "Contain it? They still don't understand. The resonance event isn't a danger. It's an opportunity. For one night, everyone will see what we see, experience what we experience, the truth of time." "People will die," Mitchell said, stepping forward. "Or worse, not everyone can handle temporal superposition." "Then they'll join us," Betty Chen said, still clutching her phantom purse, still looking for her husband after 70 years. "We're not prisoners here. We're evolved. We see all of time, experience all possibilities." "You're trapped," I argued. "Are we?" Morrison asked. He gestured, and suddenly I could see it. See them not as they appeared, but as they truly were. They weren't 17 individuals stuck in one place. They were 17 consciousness existing across all of time and space, experiencing every moment of their lives simultaneously. They were in the zone, yes, but they were also everywhere and everyone else. "My God," Harrison whispered. "They're not trapped. They're expanded." "And on October 15th, Morrison said, "everyone else will have the chance to expand too. The resonance event will show humanity the truth of time. Some will embrace it. Some will flee from it. But the world will never be the same." "We can't let that happen," Mitchell said. But her voice lacked conviction. She was seeing what I was seeing, that maybe the permanent residents weren't victims, but pioneers. "You can't stop it," Morrison said simply. "It's already happened, is happening, will happen. October 15th, 1967. October 15th, 2021. October 15th, 2075. The same event, echoing across time, each echo stronger than the last." "Then why show us the device?" I asked. "Why gather here tonight?" "Because you needed to see, to understand. You have a choice to make, Trooper Webb. All of you do. You can fight the truth of time, try to maintain the illusion of linear existence, or you can prepare humanity for what's coming. Help them understand that the expansion isn't a curse, it's evolution." The sphere pulsed, and for a moment I saw everything. Every moment of my life laid out like a map. My birth, my death, and everything in between all happening at once. I saw myself as a child, terrified of the dark. I saw myself as an old man, dying alone in a hospital bed. I saw myself here, now, making a decision that had already been made, was being made, would be made. "Choose," Morrison said, "but know that your choice has already been made. You're just experiencing the moment of making it. I looked at Mitchell, at Chen and Harrison, at the 17 souls who had found something beyond normal existence. I thought about Davidson, about the pull of the highway, about a world where everyone could see all of time at once. And I made my choice. The same choice I'd always made, was making, would make. October 15th, 2021, 11:47 p.m. I stood at mile marker 146, just outside the temporal fracture zone, watching the convoy of government vehicles arrive. 6 months had passed since that night when Morrison showed us the device. 6 months of preparation, of impossible decisions, of trying to warn a world that didn't want to believe. Agent Mitchell stood beside me, her face grim. She'd aged years in those 6 months, the weight of knowing what was coming etched in every line. "Last chance to back out, Webb," she said. "Back out of what? It's already happened. Is happening. Will happen." I'd started talking like Morrison, like the permanent residents. Once you truly understand that time isn't linear, your language starts to reflect it. Davidson pulled up in his cruiser, despite my orders to stay away. The kid, though he wasn't really a kid anymore, the zone had aged him in ways that had nothing to do with time, got out and walked over to us. "I'm not letting you do this alone," he said simply. "Do what?" Mitchell asked. "We still don't have a plan. Morrison and the others won't help us contain it. The device can't be destroyed or moved. All we can do is watch." I looked at my watch. 11:52 p.m. In 8 minutes, the boundary between 287's normal existence and its temporal fracture would dissolve completely. For 2 hours, from midnight to 2 a.m. instead of the usual 2 to 4, the entire highway would experience what that 10-mile stretch experienced every night. And if Morrison was right, it wouldn't stop there. The effect would ripple outward, showing everyone in increasingly larger radius the truth of non-linear time. "Maybe we're not supposed to stop it," I said. "Maybe we're supposed to guide it." Mitchell turned to me sharply. "Guide it how?" "The permanent residents, they're not victims. They're teachers, guides. They show people who enter the zone how to navigate non-linear time. What if that's our job tonight? To help people understand what they're experiencing." "You want to help expand the temporal anomaly? I want to help people survive it." 11:55 p.m. I walked to mile marker 147, the southern boundary. Through the darkness, I could already see the shimmer in the air, reality starting to fray at the edges. Behind me, government agents set up equipment they knew wouldn't work, protocols they knew were useless. But humans need their rituals, their illusion of control. 11:58 p.m. Morrison appeared beside me, not walked up, not drove up, just appeared, stepping out of a timeline where he'd always been standing there. "You made the right choice," he said. "Did I have a choice? You always have a choice. You've already made it, are making it, will make it. But it's still a choice." 11:59 p.m. I felt it starting. The pull wasn't just from the zone anymore. It was from time itself, unraveling, showing its true nature. My phone buzzed with emergency alerts. Temporal anomalies were being reported worldwide, not just on 287, but everywhere. The resonance event was bigger than even Mitchell's department had predicted. Midnight. Reality shattered like a mirror, each shard reflecting a different moment in time. I was simultaneously experiencing my birth in 1974, my first day as a trooper in 1998, this moment in 2021, my death in 2043, cancer, surrounded by grandchildren I didn't yet have, a moment in 1887 when this was Comanche territory, a moment in 2156 when this was underwater, every moment in between and beyond. But this time I didn't fight it. I let myself expand, experience it all. And in that expansion, I found something unexpected. Peace. The anxiety of not knowing what comes next disappeared when you can see it all laid out. The regret of past mistakes faded when you realized you were still making them, had always been making them, would always make them. And that was okay. The highway filled with vehicles from every era. But now I could see the drivers were all experiencing the same thing I was. A trucker from 2021 was simultaneously his younger self learning to drive, his older self retired in Florida, and his ancient ancestor crossing this land on horseback. A family in a minivan existed as grandparents, parents, children, and grandchildren all at once. Some people screamed, some laughed. Some, like me, simply accepted. Davidson was struggling, trying to maintain his linear perspective. I reached out, not physically but across timelines, and showed him how to navigate, how to choose which moment to experience while being aware of all moments. "This is insane," he said. Clash is saying, will say. "This is truth," I replied across all times. The zone was expanding as Morrison had predicted. Mile marker 147 became 140, then 130, then 120. Reports came in over radios that existed in multiple decades. Dallas was experiencing temporal shifts. Austin, Houston, San Antonio. Texas was unstuck in time, but also New Mexico, Oklahoma, Louisiana, the entire continent, the entire world. For 2 hours that lasted eternity and no time at all, humanity experienced non-linear time. 7 billion people suddenly seeing their entire existence, past, present, future, simultaneously. The young experienced being old. The old experienced being young. The living experienced death. The not yet born experienced life. It should have been chaos. Should have been the end of civilization. Instead, it was transformation. Because when you can see all of time, certain things become clear. Every war that would be fought had already been fought, was being fought, would be fought. And they all ended the same way, in grief and loss. Every life that seemed cut short was also lived to fullness in other moments. Every goodbye was also a hello. Every ending was also a beginning. Some people couldn't handle it. They retreated into single moments, locking themselves into linear time through sheer will. They would live the rest of their lives pretending that night hadn't happened, that time was still a simple line from birth to death. But others embraced it, learned to navigate between moments, to exist in multiple times while functioning in the present. They became like Chen and Harrison, slightly unstuck but still functional. And a few, just 17 at first but growing, chose to expand fully. To become like Morrison and the permanent residents, experiencing all of time at once, becoming guides for those who would come after. 2 a.m. The resonance event ended as suddenly as it began. Reality snapped back like a rubber band, and most of humanity found themselves locked back in linear time, but not unchanged. Everyone who had experienced that night carried the knowledge with them, the understanding that time wasn't what they thought it was. I stood at mile marker 147, now quiet and normal looking. Morrison was gone. No, not gone. Still there in other moments, always there, never there. The government vehicles were packing up, Mitchell talking rapidly into a phone about containment and cover stories that we all knew wouldn't work. "So what now?" Davidson asked. He looked different, older, younger, timeless, like me. "Now we do our jobs," I said. "We patrol the highway. We help people. We exist in this moment while remembering all moments." And Route 287? I looked at the stretch of road that had started all this. In normal time,
It was just asphalt and painted lines. But I could see its other states, the temporal fracture zone that existed between 2 and 4 a.m., the normal highway of daytime, the dirt trail of the past, the underwater highway of the future. It's still there, still showing the truth to anyone who drives it at the right time, or the wrong time, or all times. Davidson nodded. The pull is still there. To go back. It always will be, but now we know what it really is. Not a trap, but an invitation. To see more. To be more. We got in our cruisers and drove away, but also stayed. Also hadn't arrived yet. Because that's the truth Morrison and the others had tried to tell us. You don't leave Route 287. You carry it with you, all times and all places, forever. It's been 3 years since the resonance event. The government called it a mass hallucination caused by solar flares. Most people accepted that explanation because the alternative was too big to grasp. But we know the truth. Those of us who were there, who experienced it fully, we're different now. We see time differently, live differently. Route 287 still does its thing between 2 and 4 a.m., though fewer people get fully trapped now. Morrison and the others are still there, teaching those who stumble into the zone how to navigate non-linear time. Some stay, some leave, some, like me, exist in both states. Davidson took over my patrol route when I officially retired last year. But retirement is a linear concept, and I'm not strictly linear anymore. I'm retired, I'm still working, I'm not born yet, I'm long dead. All true. All happening now. The Department of Temporal Investigations still monitors the situation. Agent Mitchell visits sometimes, herself now slightly unstuck after that night. She says they're tracking similar zones worldwide, places where time shows its true nature. They're preparing for the next resonance event, scheduled for October 15th, 2075. But also happening now. Also already happened. If you're watching this in 2024 or 1967 or 2156 or whenever you are, remember this. That stretch of Route 287 between mile markers 147 and 157 isn't broken. It's showing you what was always true. Time isn't a line, it's everything, everywhere, all at once. And if you find yourself driving through Texas between 2 and 4 a.m., and you see a highway that shouldn't exist, filled with cars from every era, don't be afraid. You're not losing your mind. You're finding the truth. Just remember to choose which moment you want to act in. Because in non-linear time, choice is the only thing that's real. My name is Marcus Webb. I was/am/will be a Texas State Trooper. I patrol Route 287. And I'm still here, always here, never here. Time isn't a line. But sometimes, it's easier to pretend it is. Found in the evidence locker of the Texas Department of Public Safety, Wichita Falls District Office. Dated simultaneously 1967, 2021, 2024, and 2075. Route 287 between mile markers 147 and 157 remains an active highway. Drive carefully, especially between 2 and 4 a.m.